The Parsha of Sisa contains one of the most mysterious stories in the history of Klal Yisrael, that of the Egel Azov. It says, "Vayarom ki boshesh Moshe l'redis min ha'or." Something is unusual. Moshe, so to speak, had assured them that he was coming down. They thought he was coming down at a certain time or at a certain day. The time and the day passed. There was no Moshe. So the Medrash and the Jewish, the Meforshim all say that this was instigated by the Erev Rav, by those who were peripheral to the story of the Jewish people, who went out of Egypt because of the Jewish people, but who did not have, so to speak, the relationship to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, to Moshe, etc., that the other people had. And because of that, therefore, they instigated this. So I think we can understand it pretty much in our world today. They panicked. It was an absolute panic. Moshe took us out from Mitzrayim. They said Moshe, the whole thing is Moshe. They didn't see that Moshe is the instrument of God's will. And lo yadanu mehoyolo. Where is he? What happened to him? And without Moshe, we're stuck here in the middle of the desert. So they panicked. And when there is a general hysteria, in the Middle Ages, for instance, it happened very often that there were cases of mass hysteria. That entire sections of society saw things, believed things, acted on things that were not true, that never happened, but it was enough to destroy. The Jewish people were the victims so many times. Bubonic plague, the Black Death, and caused a tremendous series of pogroms. That's all caused by the panic of the unknown, by the unexplained, or we don't even know what tomorrow will bring, which we never know. That's the whole lesson here, is that we never know what tomorrow brings. But people are subject to this type of irrational reaction to it. So they came and they said, we have to do something, right? And Moshe's not here, so we have to do something, which is also a human trait, that when faced with a difficult situation, even if the people don't know what to do, but they have to do something. It's especially true for governments, who do all sorts of things that most of the time turn out to have been not only unnecessary, but probably very counterproductive. Make the situation worse and not better. And so they come to Aaron. And Aaron is under pressure from the people to do something. So he attempts to forestall them by saying, well, everybody should bring their gold. Well, usually people are not willing to bring their gold. But ironically, so this depends on the machlekes in the Medrash, whether the Mishkan was before the Egel or the Egel was before the Mishkan. In other words, was the Mishkan a kapora for the egel, or whether or not the Mishkan came first anyway. But by the Mishkan, we see that the Jewish people gave. So many Meforshim say, therefore, that Aaron, when he asked for the gold, should have known that they were going to give the gold, because they were accustomed now to give. And that's what the Medrash says, Yisrael nitvoim v'nosnim. Jewish people, you ask them for help, they'll do it. Nitvoim lamishkan nosnim. If you ask them for a positive thing, for a great thing, for the Mishkan, they'll give. Nitvoim lahegel nosnim. And we've seen that repeated over and over again throughout the generations, and certainly in our time, when many of the most destructive forces in the world are, and the Jewish world certainly, are financed by Jews. Who think that they're doing a philanthropic and positive thing. So they brought the gold to Aaron. So now what does he do? And Aaron knows that this is a panic-driven situation by the Erev Rav. So he takes the gold and he throws it in the fire. Again, the Medrash says, these are all metaphors for what happened. The Medrash says the eagle sprang out. It appeared. And then the Erev Rav said, Eil Elohecha Yisrael. This is your God. So it's interesting. There are discussions in Meforshim, did this really happen? Is this also a case of mass hysteria? And that's what drove them to all of these things, to all of their excesses. And because of that, they gave up on their morals, they gave up on their tradition. These are people that a week before saw were by Har Sinai. And a month before, 2 months before, were by Yam Suf. So how could it be? But that's the power of uncertainty and of panic and of everything else that fits into our society, that we ourselves are witness to, and that destroys us. And it makes us do things that are irrational, all in the name of doing things. There's a famous word that they say from the Maggid here in Shari Chesed of Shvadron, Zichrono Livrocha. So it says by the Egel, by Yashkimu Baboker, they get up in the morning and they're going to worship the Egel. So first it says Vayalu Olos. They bring up a korban olah. Now, korban olah they have no benefit from. Olos goes kulo for burned completely. Then it says vayizbechu zvachim. Then they ate offerings zvachim. And then it says vayakumu l'tzachik. They get up and l'tzachik to mock. The Gemara says Latzachik means aroyos, sexual immorality. So he said he said it on the demise of the kibbutzim here in Israel as an example. So there was a time that this was the ego here, right? It was the goal. It was the highest pristine form of society was the kibbutz. So the kibbutz was built on the fact vayalu olos. Everybody contributed. Nothing for me. Everything for the common good. Then came a later generation that thought it over, and they said, well, vayizbechu zvachim. We're going to have a korban, the egel will get, but we'll also get. We'll privatize. Right? That I should also have. And then in the end, there comes a generation of Ayakumul Tzachik, they laughed at the whole idea. They laughed at the egel itself. And that's a process in human society that idealistically many things begin. But all ideals are eventually corrupted by human nature. And therefore, from the Ola becomes Zvachim, and then it becomes Letzachik, and then we move on to the next thing, to the next idea that's going to demand Olos. And so the egel is therefore the metaphor. It's that paradigm of what the Torah wants us to see, that how human beings can delude themselves, can bring upon themselves untold disasters. Now here by the egel, thousands of people are going to die. Because of the egel. And what's the antecedent for it? Moshe was late. They thought Moshe was late. So because you think somebody's late, thousands of people should die, but that is how things unfold in the world. There's no logic to it. You're absolutely controlled by a mass hysteria that drives things. And there's no way to stop it. The only way Moshe stops it is that he destroys the egel. Not that he destroys it, he makes them drink its waters. He makes them understand that the egel is nothing. So then, but that'll go to the next thing. So then they'll argue with Moshe about the food, they'll argue about meat, they'll argue about Eretz Yisrael. It's a process which always exists. It's driven by a few, but the few have the power to panic the many, panic the people. And the prime example of that is the Meraglim. You got 10 people, and because of 10 people, millions of people didn't go to Eretz Yisrael. They were all destroyed. Driven by the few. So the Torah, which is always the Torah's Chaim, the realistic view of life, it tells us all of this so that we can take life's blows also in some sort of perspective and not be driven out of our beliefs and out of our patterns of life, and that eventually Moshe does come down, and eventually there is a Torah, and eventually there is a Klal Yisrael. And that really is the great lesson here in the Parsha Ki Sisa. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Ratzak HaRiboch Hu L'Zakov Sis Yisrael Leficha Chirba Lahem Torah Mitzvot Sherem Adonai Chavei Saman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir. Say,